Welcome to the Frontier Leader Show. Today, Martin is talking to Jenny Ainsworth.
Many leaders have put their stock and their identity in what they know. And their identity and their strength and their comfort is in what they know. Now, for those leaders, and this is going to sound very stark, they have every right to fear AI, because if you don't do anything else other than rely on your knowledge, then AI absolutely is going to come and get you.
Hello and welcome to the Frontier Leader Show. I'm Martin Wheatley, and each week I speak to leaders, coaches, practitioners and technologists working out what good leadership looks like in an AI-shaped world. While you still have the app open, please hit follow or subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. And if you want a practical starting point to leading with AI, I have a growing number of resources at theAILeaderLab.com, and the link will be in the show notes. And today we have a fantastic guest. We are speaking to Jenny Ainsworth. Now, Jenny is a best-selling author, keynote speaker, and founder of Connection Intelligence, a methodology helping organizations build meaningful human connections across generations, locations, and digital divides. She's also the author of a new book, Connection Intelligence, and a former Disney European training manager with over 20 years' experience working with leadership teams across global sectors from finance to pharmaceuticals. So, Jenny, welcome to the show.
Brilliant. Thanks for being here, Martin. Absolute delight.
And a fellow Yorkshire person,
Yes,
so that's
absolutely.
even better for a Thursday afternoon. So, first of all, look, congratulations on the launch of your book. I have started reading it. I'm about 25% of the way through. And, I think it comes at the perfect time with all the changes in technology and how that's going to impact leaders, especially with, the different generations that are now in the workplace. So first off, congratulations on that.
Thank you so much. I'm so delighted it's finally out there.
I bet it's the culmination of a lot of research and obviously your career to date.
Yeah, absolutely. The research is what took its time, actually, because I wanted it to be global research. I think sometimes in leadership, a lot of the research can be very America-centric. And sometimes it doesn't translate as well over to the UK and Europe. So I was really determined to make sure that I got it as fully rounded as possible. So yeah, that was what took the time, actually.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It's done.
Yeah, it's done and it's good. And
Right.
Just before we get into a bit more of the meat of the book and the Connection Intelligence methodology, just give us a bit about your background in a bit more, in a bit more detail. How has your work led on to the Connection Intelligence?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you said, my last corporate position was with Disney. And when I set up on my own, actually, the reason I set up was I was becoming increasingly frustrated by the consultants that we used to hire in. And I used to feel like everything was sort of off the shelf. They were coming in with a fixed solution, costing an absolute fortune. And I just thought, there must be better people out there than this. And eventually I thought, well, I'll just have to be one of them. So that was the reason why I set up on my own. Leadership was always my real passion, because yourself, one boss can make or break your day,
Yeah, absolutely.
You can fly, you can soar, you can make mistakes, all of that sort of stuff, but just you enjoy working for them. And then versus a not so great boss, and life at work can just feel excruciating, and I've worked for both of those kinds of bosses. And so I wanted to try and help people in that space, because, I don't think people wake up and think, right, I really want to be a really crappy leader. I don't think they do. Some of them are magnificent at it has to be said, but I don't think it's through intention. I think it's through ignorance, actually, and just not recognizing their impact. And so I really wanted to work on that. And so it's just kept evolving and evolving more in that leadership space. And particularly now, with people managing teams all over the world, we're not even sort of sitting next to them in the same office like we used to do. So that's a whole other dynamic of leadership that I wanted to tap into as well.
And, we've gone from people predominantly been in an office environment, sitting next to the colleague and sat opposite the manager, whether they're an overbearing manager or a really supportive manager, to now being either working internationally or at the very least hybrid. And it's a completely different skill set from when when I first joined the workplace to now having to juggle, how do you speak to that person? How do you tee up conversations? Like I said, I think this is a great topic, and you kind of hit the center of pulling the different elements together in my head. So what is the connection intelligence all about, and why does it matter?
Well, it's. I mean, I've got in the book. I've got, if you can imagine, what is it, a Venn diagram where there's three circles in a triangle. If you can imagine that, essentially what I've said is, if you think about IQ, that's your ability to think rationally, to solve problems, to use, your intelligence. Then you've got EQ, that's in another circle. So that's your ability to recognize your own emotions and manage your own emotions, recognize them in other people, and sort of adapt accordingly to other people. Then you've got AI. I've called it DQ, digital quoting, only so it just fits in a bit neater. But that digital quoting, which is how to use digital tools, how to use AI tools purposefully and intentionally. And then sort of connection intelligence comes right in the center of it. And that's, how do I use all of that? My intelligence, using my EQ, using the tools available to me in a good, intentional, purposeful way that allows me to relate to other people, whether I'm sitting next to them, whether I've never seen them before in my life, whether they're the same age as me, or whether there's 30 years difference. It's that.
Right. Okay. And like I said, I think that's a fantastic way to phrase it, because in the workplace now, you've got baby boomers all the way through to, or not quite Generation Alpha yet, but
no,
not in a couple of years you will have. But
yeah.
And they've all got distinctive ways of working, I suppose, or backgrounds to work in. So how does your methodology play to those different characteristics?
I mean, ultimately, we're all brought up in a certain way and at a certain time. So, when I was a teenager, as a kid, there were 3 channels on telly. There was BBC One, BBC Two, and ITV, and then all of a sudden, 1982, Channel 4 came, and it was like, oh! And you had to physically get up and turn the telly over. So there were rows galore, weren't there, at home? You turn over, I did it last time, and all of that, no remotes, all of that great stuff. So that formed who I was and what access I had to culture and knowledge and all of that sort of stuff. And then you've got kids now who have grown up in the YouTube era, have got access to everything at their fingertips on a phone and all of that sort of stuff. And it doesn't matter your age. Every single age seems to look at the generation below them and think, you don't know you're born, you lot. You don't know you're born. And that will go on forever. That will go on forever. What the Gen Alphas are going to say to the next ones down in terms of you don't know you're born, I don't know, but they will. But it's recognising that my reference points, my worldview are all shaped by how I've learned, how I've grown up. And some of that's brilliant and some of that could be better. And I think if you said to somebody like me, who's a fully fledged Gen X or a baby boomer, would you say you're closed-minded? Most of us would say, absolutely not. No, I'm really open-minded. But yet our behaviour betrays that at work, because you get somebody younger coming along saying, why don't we do this, or could we do that? And there's eye rolling, or they don't know what they're talking about, or I've got the experience, so actually let's do things my way. So actually we are very close-minded in the workplace because we think our way works. And guess what, a lot of the time it does. I'm not going to say it doesn't, because it does. That's what's got you to where you are. But if we're not prepared to at least bring in and listen and acknowledge different viewpoints, at some point what was good will just become okay, will become not great, will become poor. So we've got to sort of be open to not just people with experience, everybody, because everybody's got ideas and a different viewpoint. And it's about how do we align all of that? And so there might be on one project or one task, we're actually going to go with the ideas of the Gen Z person, because actually that's a really good idea. But for another task, experience is going to pay out on this one, so we'll do what we've always done. And so it's that flexibility of being open rather than just assuming that experience wins all the time, because it doesn't.
No, it doesn't. And there's a great table in your book that gives the example of, I think it's the same example, isn't it? But with the different lenses
Yeah,
down, how you would approach it, talking to your baby boomer generation versus X
yeah.
millennials and then Gen Z. And I've never really seen an example laid out like that, how you can actually apply it and think, oh, actually, yeah, you know what? Asking your Generation Z slightly more questions and asking for their thought behind it and to challenge it from their perspective, get a fresh perspective versus your baby boomers, which is a bit more formal and structured. And you know, it's fascinating when you lay it out in that table, and I've highlighted it on my Kindle so I can keep going back to it. You know, how that distinction kind of maps across the generations.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we've got to do. You know, people can be stubborn and say I am what I am, and this is who I am. But actually, we're flexing all the time. You know, a funny story that you heard in the pub or whatever. You're going to tell that to your friend in a very different way that you're going to tell it to your granny. So you know when to flex, and you think I'm not going to share that particular bit, but she'll still find this bit funny, so I'm going to tell her that. We are capable of flexing according to who we're speaking to, but there's something about at work. It's a case of no, this is my style, and this is how it is, And I think if we can just flex it a little bit, we're not changing who we are. I just think of it like a bit like a dial, really. Sometimes you need to dial things up, sometimes you need to dial them down. But ultimately, all we're trying to do is just make it easier. Who doesn't want work to be more easy?
Well, yeah. I mean, you're all there working to deliver something.
Yeah.
Why not make it easier to do it along the way? And if the person, the leader who at the top or whoever, however it's structured, has that awareness of how they're communicating, I think that makes a massive difference. And
Yeah, it does.
I can't say I've honestly been as proactive with that in my background. So, like I said, seeing that table laid out has actually stopped me and made me think about how could I have phrased different scenarios differently now.
Yeah.
In hindsight's 2020 vision, isn't it? But it's a really good example, I think.
But I love the fact that at least even that you're open to that, because I'm the same, even writing the book, I was thinking of situations that I'd dealt with and thinking now that I know differently, I would definitely have handled that better or differently or whatever. But, at the
Yeah,
end of the day, that's what growth and learning's all about, isn't it? There's no point, it's not about justifying what you've done, but at the end of the day, I did what I did because I thought that was the best thing to do. Now I know better. I might not be able to change what I've done in the past, but at least, I know better now if
yeah,
similar situations arise. And that's all we can do, I think, as human beings.
yeah. No, absolutely. My kind of lens on leadership at the minute is all about how AI is going to change things and
Mm.
how teams have probably they've got numerous options of how they implement it, but one of the two stark ones, either it's going to go really, on the one hand, teams are going to get flattened, redundancies because everything's more automated. On the other kind of side is, everyone is using it to better enhance how they do things and the capability of them, their teams, etc. How do you kind of see the AI tools, the chat GPTs and everything? How do you see that sitting above and interacting with leaders, especially in the communication space?
Well, for me, there's two things that leaders have always sort of. Well, one thing that leaders always moan about is they haven't got time. They haven't got time. There's too much to do. And I'm not going to dispute that, absolutely. But I also think that many, many leaders have put their stock and their identity in what they know, technically what they know, and then they share that with so they get promoted, and their identity and their strength and their comfort is in what they know. Now, for those leaders, and this is going to sound very stark, they have every right to fear AI, because if you don't do anything else other than rely on your knowledge, then AI absolutely is going to come and get you. But if you lean into the fact of, okay, we've now got a lot of companies have got their own AI platforms and things in their own companies.
Mm,
And even if they haven't, there's plenty out there that people can be using. If I've got team members or me who can find out answers using AI, find them out quickly, and they're good answers, you go for it, because actually that frees them up coming to me, me doing all of that. What that then gives me is time to actually lead. and to spot what does Martin need, or Jane seems a bit quiet. You know, she's normally the first one to be putting a hand up. What's going on there? And to be able to notice, you know, the human side of leading. So actually, for me, lean into AI. Use it wisely. Use it to free your time up so you can lead in the proper sense of the word. So I'm all for it.
Yeah, I agree completely with what what you've just said there. There was a recent restructure by Jack Dorsey's company, Block, and I don't know whether you saw it or not, but I think it was 10,000 people, and they cut 4,000 management layer out because the kind of logic behind the thinking, according to the article that they wrote about it, was the management layer, it does nothing other than move messages up and down the hierarchy, and they kind of stripped that out. And I mean, I don't know how many people are now, that the kind of span of control for a leader must be enormous now, but that to me is really short-sighted, because the elements that a good manager or a good leader within an organization does all the stuff that you've just mentioned there. Do they pick up on the nuance that someone is feeling a bit down today, take them to one side, have that conversation, help coach them through whatever. And I just think there's a real risk that companies look at it just as a cost-saving layer reduction, and they don't take that connection piece through to actually think it through for the longer term and the value.
They'll end up recruiting, whether they fully recruit the full 4,000 is doubtful, but they'll end up recruiting a lot more at some point, because they'll recognise that there is something fundamentally missing. So it is, we're always on this balance between tech and humanity, and I do believe that they can go hand in hand. I do, and it's finding that right balance, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Have you had any examples with clients that you've worked with where they've gone through this kind of challenge, and how they balance the new tech versus people question?
I mean, I have to say, I think they're struggling. I think that they're either going all in showing people how to use the tech, which they need to show people, of course they do, and how to use that wisely and all of that sort of stuff. That's great. But what I'm not seeing as much of is, okay, how are you going to evolve as a leader? How can you better impact the business? Because this tech is impacting our business by allowing us to do X and Y and Z. How are you now going to impact the business better now that you've got that tech side of things doing those things for you? And I do not see that happening as much. So there's all the focus on how to use the tech, but not how to balance that with the human side of leadership. And there's definitely room for both, definitely.
Yeah, and I guess coming back to the original, or the first point that we made about the dynamic being hybrid and everything, that how in your experience, how can a leader build that psychological safety across? You've got the new tech coming in, you've got people who don't see each other every day, you've got people around the world. What are some kind of practical ways that a leader can think about improving that?
First of all, you've got to call it out and just say, look, if we were all in an office together, people would be filing into a meeting room, you'd be having a bit of a chat, grabbing a coffee, shooting the breeze a little bit before the meeting actually starts. Now we sort of switch on our cameras dead on the time that the meeting starts. We get straight into it. You've lost all that sort of gluing you together, really. So it's finding ways of doing that at the start of a meeting and building that in. I think in terms of meetings, too much is done where, David gives an update, John gives an update, Catherine gives an update. And, I can understand the reason behind it. They're trying to be very inclusive and trying to make sure that people are aware. This is when you see people's eyes going off and they're on another screen as people are giving their update. So therefore, that is not a useful, meaningful use of time. It's not helping people connect. So if you really want the update, fine, get it uploaded somewhere. And if those people want to look at it, they can look at it, that's fine. How can we use that time to better connect with one another, to better know what's going on, to be able to say, I've had an issue this week that I'm struggling with. So how do we do that? The only way we can do it is to start to model that vulnerability, being open. You know, what's one thing I've learnt this week? What's one thing I need for next week? Those sorts of things. So, you know, the learning, it could be something, well, I didn't realise that you could do so on. Why didn't anybody tell me that? And it's like, oh, yeah, I've known it forever. Oh, flipping it, that would have saved me it. Those sorts of things. Or it might be what I've learnt is, you know, about this person, whatever it might be. What I'm looking for next week is, you know, it's, you're pulling on the group together. The other thing as well, something that was told to me quite a few years ago that actually I thought, oh, I don't like that, was if you as a leader can say to your team, right, there's one thing I could start, stop, or continue doing that would help you feel a bit even more effective, or insert whatever, feel even more connected, or, you know, what it might be, what would it be? And when somebody first told me that, I thought, oh, I daren't, you know, because what happens if they say, well, the one thing you could start doing is, you know, looking for another job. That'd be amazing. And they said, no, I honestly don't think it will be. I think it'll be really, really small, innocuous things. And it was. It was things like email subject lines, timing of meetings, really, really innocuous things. I honestly can't remember anything that I fundamentally recoiled at and said, oh, I can't do that. I'm really sorry. Most things were like, yeah, all right, fine. And what that meant was I asked, I listened, and I acted. And that in and of itself brings psychological safety, because people think, at least she's open and she's wanting to do her best and all of that sort of stuff. So I think in this hybrid way of working, it's, you know, what's one thing that we could start doing that would help you feel more connected, or what's one thing that we could stop doing, whatever it might be. And ask them, you know, and some people might not know on the spot. So just give them a chance to have a think and to come back to you in a couple of days. And I doubt that there'll be things that are so outrageous that can't be implemented. But what that then does is you're building that safety, you're building that glue to stick you all together as a team, irrespective of how often you actually physically see one another.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's some good examples there. I guess I think back to how I, you know, ran some of my meetings. It was very much a huddle kind of scrum focus, quick 5 minute, or not even 5 minutes, but, you know, what's going on to the next meeting. And that isn't the best way to get, you know, the right things out. There's a place for it if you're working tight on a deadline, absolutely. But you're right. The psychological safety, just coming back to your examples there, starts with asking the small questions, doesn't it? It doesn't need to be a grand unveiling of you are now psychologically safe. It's, you know, what do you need help with? Come on, what do you think to this? What are the start-stop examples? And I think that's especially when teams are learning new technology like AI at the minute together. I think that transparency and openness, it must be beneficial in the long run. It'll build a lot more trust and engagement as well.
It definitely does. I think that the scale, the 1 to 10 scale, especially when everybody's sort of learning something like new tech or whatever, is really useful. So by that, you know, you can say on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you at the moment in you know, the use of this tool? 1 is couldn't be any less confident, 10 is super confident. And then go around and give you numbers. And this isn't about getting to 10. The next question you say, okay, right, so Jim, you're on 3. So what's got you to 3? What's working for you? So there's none of this, oh, you're not at 10, because that's shaming and that's what makes people feel I can't say anything. But it's okay, so you're not on a 1, you're not on a 2. What's working there? Where is your confidence? Okay, so, you know, Jenny, you're on a 6, so you're feeling a bit higher. So what's got you to there? And then Jenny says, well, yeah, similar as Jim, but what else I've got is, and he started to share that knowledge. And then your killer question is, okay, what needs to happen for you to just move 1 step further up the scale? You're feeling a bit more confident. Jim says, well, you know, I need to know more about this. Bill says, I need to know more about that. Jenny says, and before you know it, there might be somebody that says, "Oh, well, I can do that for you, Bill. Yeah, we'll do that afterwards, and I'll help you with that." Or you notice that there's a theme where a lot of people are thinking, "Yeah, that would be really helpful." Actually, you think, "Okay, all right then. Next meeting, let's all have a look at that together." So what you're doing is you're modelling vulnerability, and vulnerability in the true sense of the word is just feeling okay in saying, "I'm not sure," actually. And rather than thinking I'm going to be embarrassed by that or shamed, it's like, is there anywhere in the team we can pull on to help you with that? Or is it a common theme, in which case, let's all do it together. And that
Yeah.
really works, I think.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's fostering that engagement and collaborative approach, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Which I think needs to be even more mindful with the tools in place. Like I said, a lot of people are going to start managing agents, and it could quite easily just be quite siloed, individually siloed structures, corporate structures where you've just got a lot of individual people doing a lot of individual tasks, albeit more tasks than they've ever completed in the space of a day. But just coming back to the engagement piece around, because there's a great stat on your book about the Gallup engagement, the cost of lack of engagement. I think it was 8.8 trillion
Yeah, it's
from
ridiculous.
memory, which is just, I had to Google how many zeros
I
are in a
know.
trillion. And, it's just mind boggling. And that's probably going to, I don't know, are the results out for this year yet? I'm sure that will probably go up
Yeah,
anyway.
absolutely. I'm sure.
And I was just going to lead on to the connection piece that's in your book, the 3 essential connections that every employee needs, and it kind of follows on from what we were just saying in terms of psychological safety. But do you want to just cover off what those 3 connections are?
Yeah, definitely. So the first one, in order for people to feel really connected at work and therefore able to be at their best, to do the best work, enjoy working, they need 3 sort of core connections. So the first one is connection to colleagues. And yes, that's the obvious one. Most organisations now have definite an element of sort of remote working. People aren't all in the same space all at the same time. So it's not about being best friends with people, but it's going back to that safety. It's feeling that even if I don't see you day to day, you've got my back and I've got yours. I'm not feeling wary of you. All these connections used to happen organically. You'd be waiting for a coffee, you'd be, grabbing a sandwich, you'd have a quick chat and stuff like that. So it's about how can we be more intentional about creating that connection to our colleagues so people know what makes you tick, know what your hot buttons are, all of that sort of stuff. Then there's connection to resources. Now, again, when you're in an office and you're trying to find a bit of information, you can turn to somebody who's been here forever and say, Martin, am I being... Where's so-and-so? I am looking everywhere on this internet site or this C drive. I can't find it. And you can have that conversation. Or there's somebody who has been around, who's got all that knowledge up in their head. And it can be so infuriating as a person at work just trying to find the answer to something that should be really, really simple. So it's how can we make life easier for people to be connected to what they need resource-wise to be able to do the job well? So what can we do to signpost things and make it easier so they're not spending forever trying to find stuff? So there's that as well. And that's actually more difficult than you think, because this is where it goes back to. If you are familiar with stuff, you stop seeing where the glitches are. And if you know where to find something, it doesn't cross your mind to think, if I was brand new, how obvious is it that this is on that drive or that's on there? Or do you know what I mean? And so actually, it's thinking, how do we walk through this experience as somebody with brand new eyes to think, how easy is it to actually do your job and know where things are? And then the last thing, it's connection to the organisation, which is, the culture, the values. Do I feel like I belong? Do I feel like I can make a difference? Do I love what they're doing and how they're doing it and the direction of travel, all of it. So it's not just a job. I feel proud and enjoy working for that company. And I think those 3 things are really important in helping somebody have a good day at work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess it comes back to the kind of, you've got to engage all your different generations to help you get that, to help you form that, especially with the connection to resources piece. Like you said, you've got people with knowledge in their head, institutional knowledge that's been there for sometimes decades, sometimes, and getting that out of someone's head. And technology can help once it's out of someone's head, because it can help. Especially now, you can just chat to your computer and it'll tell you an answer or point you in the right direction. You've still got to engage that human, to build that infrastructure, digital kind of data infrastructure in the background, to do it. So no, it's yeah, absolutely. It's 3 key essentials, I would say, definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
For How do you use AI day to day? No.
At the moment, I tend to use, there's two AI tools platforms that I use. I use Claude
Mm,
and I use Manus. I use Manus
yeah.
more for, uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Visuals. Uh,
Okay.
yeah, so all my visuals in my book, they're all sort of line drawings, very simple. I use Manus for all of those. So I described what I wanted, the style I wanted, and what I wanted it to reflect. And Manus created those, which was great. So I was really pleased with that. And then I'm using Claude more for some of the day-to-day stuff. It might be looking through some of my old work or old posts or even old manuals, leadership manuals, and saying, can you pull out some topics that I can talk on from there or some posts and things like that? That's good. And then finally, Perplexity. I use Perplexity a lot just to double check my research and make sure that it was absolutely sound in the book, and because I wanted it to be credible and I did not want anybody to come back and say, where's this reference from? And me thinking, do you know, I actually don't know. Or, well, I saw it on the internet, so therefore it must be right, right?
Yeah.
It's just, making sure that it was absolutely, sound in terms of research. So they're the three.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's a good three base, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Claude's the one that I tend to use for the main workhouse alongside Microsoft Copilot. But yeah, certainly the fact checking bit, Perplexity. I agree. It goes out and actually does a decent
Yeah.
sense check of all your data. And it's interesting in the world that you can create content just at the drop of a hat. It's nice to know that you've written this book. It's your voice, it's your words. You've used the tools to support the research, but ultimately it's what it's based on your experience and your career so far.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's right.
look, that's been. In fact, we could talk about this all day. I love the whole element of how you can build engagement and reinforce it, continually reinforce it. And like you said, or like I've said, sorry, I've not always got it right in the past, and it's continually learning and developing, and it's a fascinating topic, especially when you look at the Gallup numbers and you think, wow, this is having this much economic impact. There was always one question which I always found really weird on I think it was the Gallup survey, was, do you have a best friend at work? And I thought, I don't know if I'd ever. It's always a strange question, is that,
Yeah.
to me? Do you have a
Yeah.
best friend? But
Yeah.
I suppose it plays back to the individual, your co-workers and your colleagues
Yeah.
being in
It
that
does.
relationship space. But yeah. Okay, right. We shall move into the second half of the show, where I am going to ask you for three kind of takeaways, or three things that the listener could take away, adopt, put into practice. It could be a book, your book, could be a recommendation of an article, a TV program, or anything that you think would be useful for them to take away based on the conversations we're having.
Well, I have to say, get my book, get my book, get my book. Single mother, you're keeping the fridge full and the lights on, people, if you buy it.
I'd be disappointed if you hadn't have said that.
Right. Honestly, I was just talking with you, Martin, weren't we, just before we started recording. There's so many management books that I think, oh, I really like the sound of that. And then I get it and I think, oh, it's like wading through treacle, and I just think, oh, just give me the exact summary. It's just too hard to wade through. What I'm hoping is that this book is the complete opposite of that. I think it's something you can read from start to finish, but I also think it's something that you can just dip into and find the bits that are important to you, and that are helpful. So I'd love you to have a look. Kindle. It's also on paperback, so do go and have a look at that. I think it's really well worth it as a leader in the AI space. In terms of other things, I hope that what people have taken on board is what I said a little bit earlier, is this sense of, if somebody said to you, are you open-minded? Most of us would say yes, but actually our behaviour betrays that. And what I'd say is, You know, wherever you are in your career and in your leadership career, your experience counts. It absolutely counts. And it's not gospel. So be that brilliant person who can still be open to new things coming in, new suggestions. Don't dismiss it out of hand, even if deep down you think, I know this won't work. It's like, just be a bit more open to and a bit more curious about asking a few more questions to see, even if it can't fully work, can some of it work? It's that kind of thing, you know. It doesn't have to be an either or, it can be a some. So just be open and recognise that everybody has got some value and some worth to bring, and it's tapping into all of that brilliance.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree with that. Yeah, absolutely.
What's a third one? What's a third one, Martin? Be what you want. Be the leader that you want to be. You know, use really good awareness about that, and think about what's frustrated you with bosses in the past. Being micromanaged, being told what to do when you think, I know what to do. You know, don't treat me as an idiot. Or alternatively, the other end of the scale, being left completely on your own, where you think he or she would have no idea how I'm managing in this situation because they just never ask. So just use the tools that are out there to free you up to be the boss that you would love to have had in your career. Be kind, be supportive, give people stretch, all the things that everybody needs in the workplace.
Fantastic. They are three fantastic things. So I'll just summarise them because I think it's worth repeating. Be the leader you want to be.
Yep.
Be the person who is open to feedback, and buy the book because the book will help connect everything together.
Yes.
Absolutely. And, you know, it is the book I wish I had when I was starting out because it does do that genuinely. So
Thank you.
that has been fantastic conversation. Thank you very much. Where can people find you? Where can people reach out to you if they want to work more with you?
They can come either to my website, which is simple as jennyainsworth.com, or come and find me on LinkedIn. And it literally is, again, linkedin.com/Jenny Jenny Ainsworth. Come and see me. If you've come via this pod, let me know, because it's always good to know that how you know all the connections work and all of that sort of stuff. That would be great.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. We will put all the links to Jenny, to her book, the page, to her website, and to her LinkedIn on the show notes. So yeah, reach out to Jenny, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
If you found this useful, please hit follow or subscribe if you haven't already, and a review or a rating genuinely does help the show, and I do truly appreciate it. The AILeaderLab.com has a host of resources for free, everything you need to start leading with AI practically, and that's the AILeaderLab.com, and the link for that will be in the show notes. Until next time, bye-bye for now.